let's talk about Brock Purdy, actually. Before that game-winning drive, Purdy really struggled. He was 17 for 32, was off target on 35% of his throws. He got it together when it mattered most, okay? He went 6 for 7 on the game-winning drive, and his only incompletion was that drop by George Kittle. But, Marcus, you got to still focus on the other stuff, right? How concerning was it, the play of Purdy throughout the game on Saturday night?
First of all, we can give him credit for a game-winning drive. That's important as well, as we saw at the end. But it was murky, and it makes me nervous. The last two times that I've seen Brock Purdy play quarterback out, he's given the football away. If you go back to the Ravens game, the starter set mostly in that Week 18 game. But when I walked away from this game, y'all, I wasn't thinking about Brock Purdy after I watched the film. I thought about how many opportunities Green Bay missed to win this football game early. That is what came to my mind. So it's a nuanced discussion, and that's why I love being on this show with y'all, because we can talk about all sides of the game. San Francisco capitalized on interceptions that fell in their hands. Green Bay Packers didn't. The Green Bay Packers didn't capitalize in red zone. The San Francisco 49ers did. But when it comes to Brock Purdy, that is not going to win you a Super Bowl playing that way 1 through 3 quarters, especially if you meet the Baltimore Ravens.
Fella, part of me thinks like he needed a game like that, to have to go lead that game-winning drive. I agree with you. It was bad the first 3 quarters. And I don't know how much of it was the weather and how much of it was he threw that early, almost pick 6 to Darnell Savage, and then he completely shelled up and became a hesitant player. But to go and say, hey, I have to go make these throws in this moment does matter. I mean, this end breaker is huge. They clear out that backside safety. RC and I talked about some of this coverage last week. I mean, he floats this ball as he's getting destroyed, okay, over 2 or 3 defenders. And let's credit Jennings for going up and making a tough contested catch. But this throw takes one thing, courage, okay? Not a ton of talent, courage. It does take talent, but more, you got to have some guts to make it. And then the third down throw to Ayuk. I mean, this is great coverage versus man. They're going to drop down. He does a good job of holding that safety. And this nickel undercuts it. He's on Ayuk's back hip.
This is a throw.
This is a big-time ball. Now, and we spent a great amount of today having a conversation about a quarterback who maybe didn't make that throw or two at the end of the game. So it's weird to watch that game because you sit there and say he's not that type of player for the first 3 quarters. He did play poorly, but you have to tip your hat to him. You say, hey, if they get there, they were going to need some type of game-winning, game-saving, season-saving performance that he put on.
Well, I think the thing that comes to mind for me is in order to win a Super Bowl, sometimes you have to learn to win ugly. You have to not be at your best, which the San Francisco 49ers weren't. They weren't their best on defense, and obviously their quarterback didn't play a game that we're used to seeing him play. But I do always feel when I'm watching Brock Purdy, like, is the glass shoe going to fall off, right? Is the clock going to strike 12? Are we going to see what we saw for the 2.5 quarters he played without Deebo Samuel throughout the middle of the season? And so I think if you're the San Francisco 49ers, you have to do what they did. You know who I know is always going to show up? 23. When I turn around and hand this football off to Christian McCaffrey, he's going to find ways to make plays. And he wasn't just running with skill. It wasn't just about how quick he could be or fast. It was the physicality. You think about the long touchdown runs. He breaks 2 tackles, one by Darnell Savage, another by Jonathan Owens. And then you see the speed as he gets into the open field. I think every now and then Kyle Shanahan has to be reminded of that. He has to remember that no matter how well Brock Purdy can execute in his offense, no matter how many skilled players he has on the outside, he has the #1 weapon in the entire NFL when it comes to the running back position. And you'd be smart to use him because not only will he create big plays, he can also help settle your quarterback down.
Yes, sir.
I'm glad you mentioned Kyle Shanahan because you guys know I think he's like the greatest play caller to walk the earth right now. However, he makes some befuddling choices in game management, clock management, and that was the case in this particular game. There were a few things that jumped out to me, but the one that really, really jarred me was how he managed the end of the first half. They had all of their timeouts at the 2-minute warning, but the way he used them, the conservatism, playing for essentially what was, a challenging field goal in the weather that they missed, he can't make those kinds of choices when he goes up next week against a head coach that I think we know will not play it conservative in any situation. Yeah. And it was especially confusing to me, given that in other parts of the game, and Ryan alluded to this, it's almost like he trusted Purdy too much. And yet in that moment, I didn't think he used the clock well at all. And this is something that crops up at times with him. As much as I think he is an amazing play caller, the game management needs to be better, especially next week and the following.
I think it'd be really interesting throughout this week for Kyle, Mina, and going into the game is he's going to have to build his plan for Debo. Right. And then he's going to have to build a plan for without Debo. And that's going to be super difficult versus a Detroit defense that is playing high-level ball.
Yeah, and I do wonder how much the loss of Debo not only jarred Purdy, but also jarred Kyle, not only just giving Jennings the Debo carry, which it was clearly a mistake. But from that point on, it felt like he didn't make adjustments to the offense, and he went into that game specifically thinking Debo was going to be available.